In April of 2020, Zell and I had been in a relationship for 3 years. And during those 3 years, Zell really got to know who I am, both the good and the bad. He suffered a lot because of his relationship with me. No man would have put in as much time and effort into our relationship as he did. I flew to China to meet him in February of 2017. And I moved to China, started working as an English teacher. He taught me how to be an English teacher. He taught me about Chinese history, Chinese politics, the Chinese language. I got to know some of his coworkers. And then I got to travel a lot with him. We went to Beijing together. We went to Thailand together. And then we went to France together. He introduced me to his daughter, which is a huge deal. We had only been together for a few months. But still, he wanted me to be there when he spent time with his daughter. Already in the first year, I was showing my true colors with him. It was seeping through that really, although I wanted to present as a kind person, I wanted to seem like a good person to the general public. Really, in my private life with him, I showed how crazy and how cruel I can be. And Zell took a positive attitude. He wanted to help me. He thought, look, Melissa has problems, but she also has some redeeming qualities. And she can work on them and she can become a better person. We moved to Canada together. And for Zell, he had been a scholar of Buddhism. He'd studied many different languages. He'd lived in many different countries around the world. He had a diverse background. He had published essays. He was a brilliant scholar. I was not. To find some common ground, we decided that we would enroll in baking school together to become vegan bakers. It was a different prospect for me, as a 25-year-old woman who had a degree in English, who had worked as an English teacher in China, to become a vegan baker at that stage, to become a vegan baker working in Canada, than it was for Zell, somebody who was 39 years old and enrolling in baking school. And it would be a different story entirely that I would be telling today if, during baking school, I had been a loving partner, if I had been a kind partner. I could say, well, baking school turned out to be a nightmare, turned out to be a disaster, but at least I was a good partner to Zell during that time. At least we were going through this together. And I was sweet to him, I was kind to him. But that's not true. Yes, baking school was a disaster, but I was a disaster. I was cruel. I was unkind. I was psychotic. And I was so hurtful towards Zell for no good reason. And I had been earlier that year in 2018 as well, when we lived together in Victoria. And then he moved with me to Vancouver to take these courses in Vancouver at a baking school with me as a sign, as a symbol that he and I were going to do this together. This was going to be our future together. Baking school was a disaster, and we both dropped out. And after that, we went back to Victoria, and I had to determine what I would do moving forward, and he had to determine what he would do moving forward. And because he supported my intellectual development, because after having been through that 1 week of baking school before I dropped out, I decided I wanted to live the life of the mind. I decided that I didn't want a life of meaningless drudgery. I didn't want to have a career like working as a baker. I wanted to have something more intellectual, something of more substance that I devoted my life to. I wanted the life of the mind. He encouraged me to study Chinese in Taiwan, and he moved to Taiwan for me, with me, so that I could study at a university in Taiwan. In the meantime, we had visits to France to visit his daughter. And again, it would be a different story if I could say that I was kind to him, that I was loving, that I was a good partner during those trips. But that's not the case. The last time that he saw his daughter was December 2018. And I was terrible. I was an abusive partner to him in front of his daughter. It's a very delicate situation. And now he hasn't seen his daughter since December 2018 because of me. Because he allowed me into his life. A mentally unstable, cruel person he allowed into his life because he loved me. He was committed to me, and he thought that I could do better. He thought that I could become a better person. And I showed my true colors. But still, he was devoted to me, and he moved to Taiwan with me after that. And I was an asshole to him in Taiwan. I was not a kind, supportive partner to him, but he was still kind and supportive toward me. I took just one semester in Taiwan, and then I left because I had a medical problem with my skin. It was cystic acne that I went back to Michigan for so that I could take Accutane. So he had committed to studying in Taiwan, studying Chinese with me, and I abandoned him. I left him while I was in Michigan. Nevertheless, he was still committed. He still wanted to be in a relationship with me. We took a trip together in December to Athens. We were considering moving to Athens, and then we decided we would move back to Victoria together. That he would enroll again at University of Victoria, and that I would enroll at University of Victoria. I applied to get my second bachelor's degree in Asian Studies, so that we would both study Chinese together in Victoria. That is where our relationship was in April of 2020. And on that trip in Athens, we talked a lot about our relationship. And we saw eye to eye. At least Zell thought that. I thought that. I thought we had made progress during that trip. I did have mental breakdowns on that trip. I did have meltdowns. But still, it seemed like an optimistic period. That we could actually make it. That we could actually, that I could become a better person, that I could be a good partner to him finally, after all this time. And we also seemed to be on the same page with the open relationship. For years, I had been an asshole to Zell about the open relationship. When he had options, he could have had sex with other women. And because I was so fragile, he turned women down. He thought, I don't want to hurt Melissa. I don't want her to feel unduly jealous. I don't want to incite competitive feelings of inadequacy if I have sex with this woman. So he turned down women that he could have had sex with during those 3 years because of me, because of my instability, because of my fragility. And then when it came time for me to try to have a secondary partner, I matched on Tinder with Abishek Desikan. And I do want to continue with these messages, move forward chronologically, but I keep getting stuck on these first 2 weeks because sometime between April 6th and April 20th, it led to us having this cybersex event that ruined my life forever, that ruined my relationship with Zell forever, that ruined Zell's life for 4 years while I lied to him. I lied to him about what had happened for 4 years. Only this April did I come clean to him, in April of 2024. It's now August 16th, 2024 today. I did not improve in our relationship after this. Zell had helped me. He had encouraged me in my intellectual progress. Number one, in our private lives, when we went on long walks together, he taught me a lot. We talked about world history, talked about politics, talked about language learning, human sexuality, talked about relationships, talked about me and my family, just talked about everything. Talked about his family. Everything under the sun. We talked about everything together. We had it's just mind-boggling to me, and I'm still so upset knowing that in these 2 weeks, what happened, what transpired in these messages with Abishek led me to do what I did. To break the rules of our open relationship, to cheat on Zell, even though we had an open relationship. It's just so stupid. And when I look at these messages, I am ashamed myself. I am ashamed of what I said. I'm ashamed of how I said it. I know who I am, and I know that I was simping for this guy because I wanted him to tell me I was pretty. I wanted him to tell me I was smart. I wanted him to tell me that I was a good person, when really, at that time, I had been going through this process over 3 years of realizing what a bad person I was. I was in a relationship with a genuinely good man. A man who loved me. A man who put in so much effort into our sex life. A man who really made me feel beautiful and made me feel smart. Because I thought that he was brilliant. I thought that Zell was brilliant. I read his articles before I met him. I was blown away. I watched his YouTube videos before I met him. I was sincerely in awe of just how brilliant he was. What he was able to accomplish. So when Zell gave me the time of day, it genuinely made me feel smart. It genuinely made me feel beautiful that he wanted to make love to me. And he did. Just the sheer amount of pleasure that I had from a relationship with Zell, it's just unbelievable how ungrateful I was at this stage. The point I want to get to is that Zell had helped me become a better person in all these ways, intellectually. In 2018, he encouraged me to read ancient Greek texts. He encouraged me to start a YouTube channel of my own talking about that. He encouraged me to study Chinese. Physically, he knew that when we met, I had never lifted weights. I was not a fit person. He taught me how to lift weights safely, without injuring myself. In 2018, when we lived together in Victoria, he went to the gym with me. He was encouraging. He was my gym buddy. And he was very encouraging when I made any progress at the gym. So intellectually, physically, morally, ethically, emotionally, he saw that I was somebody who really, really struggled with emotional instability. And instead of just scoffing, instead of sneering at me for being so emotionally unstable, so crazy, he actually tried to analyze what was going on, help me out with solutions, talk through my problems. Psychologically, actually, he should get credit, He was providing a service way better than any psychologist could, because he was actually honest with me and he really analyzed what was going on, my behavior. He really knew the kind of person I was at that time. But he did not think I was capable of doing this. He still trusted me. He did not think that I was capable of cheating on him in this way, the way that I did with Abishek. Oh. And looking at these messages, Zell can read and see, as bad as he thought I was, in a way, I was putting on a show for Zell, because in my correspondence with Abishek, I'm also, in effect, putting on a show, but it shows that I am vain. This is a weakness of mine. Because somebody told me I was pretty, I sacrificed my morals. That shows how vain I am, just to have somebody tell me that they think I'm hot. Just to have somebody tell me that they think I'm kind, that they think I'm smart, that they think I'm sexy. But really, this person, I actually felt like I could be something when I was with Zell, when I was talking with Zell. I thought that I could be somebody better by being around Zell. I didn't feel that way with Abishek. I was not attracted to him the way that I was towards Zell. I found Zell incredibly attractive. I wanted to fuck Zell. I wanted to be with Zell. I wanted everything with Zell. That's not how I thought about Abishek. When I first saw him, I thought, this dude is not attractive, but maybe we could have some common ground. Maybe I could appreciate something about him and he could appreciate something about me. And maybe he could be a secondary partner. Maybe he could be the third sexual experience that I have in my life. And that's why I gave him a chance. And you can see from the first messages that I am trying to steer this in the direction of what my intellectual interests were at the time. So he writes, "Hello there," with a smiley face, April 7th, 2020 at 6:17 p.m. I said 1 minute later, "Hey, I was just checking out your blog. Are you still learning Sanskrit?" He said, "Oh, cool. Let me know what you think. I am writing a new post. Should publish it this week." Long story short, he is not studying Sanskrit anymore. He says, "No, when I moved to Seattle, I found a teacher, but he was pretty far from where I live, and I couldn't keep up with my schedule. I've bought books to teach myself, but making slower progress." I said of his blog, "It's very interesting. Looking forward to your new post next week." Yeah, I am just saying, Zell knows me. He knows how unkind I actually am. He knows how cruel I actually am. And I have accepted that. I have accepted what a mean person I really am. I know when I first saw his blog, I was not impressed. I was impressed with Zell's blog when I first read his post. I was mind blown. I thought what he wrote was of great significance, was very important, was well researched, was just well written. I was just amazed by how Zell wrote. I did not think that about Abishek's blog. I didn't. So when I said, "It's very interesting, looking forward to your next post," I know that I am just being flattering here. I'm just being a simp. So I say then, you may not be interested in the content, but you may be interested in seeing my YouTube videos to get a sense of my voice. I sent a link to my YouTube channel. I said, "I recorded these in 2018 when I was interested in learning more about ancient Greece, which I knew basically nothing about beforehand. I feel like now I'd be able to make more sophisticated videos about the books I read, but life got in the way and I haven't uploaded in a long time. I'd like to make more educational content for YouTube in the future." So I'm saying, yes, I would like to make more YouTube videos that have educational content. And he says, "Oh, wow, amazing. Let me check it out before I respond to you because that's something I'm super interested in." Never again did he ask me about that. Never again did he say anything about my videos, even though we talked for an entire year after this. He never once said anything about ancient Greece. If you go through the rest of those messages, never once did it come up again. And I am to blame too. I didn't say, "Yeah, I'm still interested in ancient Greece. I still want to read Plato's Republic. I still want to go back and make videos talking about this." That's on me too, But he never brought it up. He never said, "Hey, I know you've made these videos. I'm inspired to read a book because of you." No. So he sends a video of him playing guitar and singing with his friend, and I said, "I'm impressed." But I wasn't. I know. I used to sing in choir. I used to play the guitar myself. I used to play violin myself. I have known people in bands, including my first boyfriend. I was not impressed with his playing. I was not impressed with his friends playing, their singing. Why did I say that? And then he says, "You're very kind." Yeah, because I wanted to be perceived as a kind person when I really wasn't. I just wanted to say something polite. It's really important that I would have been honest here at this point, that we would have just realized we had nothing in common, and that I had no respect for him intellectually, I had no respect for him musically, I had no respect for him sexually. So I said, "Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. You might be interested in some of my BF's videos on Buddhism. He was a scholar of Buddhism and taught himself Pali." So I send YouTube links to Zell's YouTube channel. Yeah, and I write a lot about you know, education. I say about my University of Victoria Asian Studies degree, I have my study permit and I made sacrifices to stay here in Canada. Said the experience of going through the Asian Studies degree would also allow me to expand my knowledge of Asian history. I'd be challenging myself by writing formal essays for classes again, and on a personal level, I'd like the chance to take advantage of the educational opportunity of being in formal university classes again. And I talk about having studied Chinese in Taiwan. And then he changes the subject. Did I tell you like taking photographs? Which I think is a grammatical error. I think he meant to say, did I tell you I like taking photographs? And I said, I saw in your Tinder bio that you're into photography. What got you interested in photography? He said, I don't know, I just liked it since I was a kid. I used to take landscapes and nature mostly, but of late I've also been doing portraits of people. I would love to do a shoot or two of you if you're up for it, with a smiley face. So that was an opportunity for me to say no. To show that I wasn't vain, that I would take no interest in doing something like that. If I really had been an intellectual at that stage, I would have said, no, I have no interest. I don't want you to take a photo of me showing that I'm a beautiful person. That is something I have no interest in, right? No, I did have interest in that. I took great interest in that. Said, oh, that would be fun. Maybe in a few months my skin will look better, and maybe my gym will open up so that I can work out again. The health problem I left Taiwan for was actually just acne. I've struggled with acne and taken medications for it for many years, but I finally took Accutane, a pretty serious acne medication, which has a lot of restrictions on it, so I had to stay home while I took it. I hope my skin stays clear now so that it looks better on camera. I mean, you saw the most recent photos of me on my Tinder profile, but I do have some scarring redness that will take some time to fade. And he says, you look beautiful, Melissa. I find you super cute. He says, I couldn't place the locations of your pics, though. I think the last one was in Taiwan, as you seem to be wearing a Chinese attire. Said that one was actually taken in Thailand a couple years ago. Right, because my boyfriend took me to Thailand. Because my boyfriend cares about me and wants to show me the world. That jacket I did actually get in China, though. Yeah, I picked it out with Zell. I wear it all the time because it reminds me of the first time I met Zell. It's the first week that I met him. And now it's in the garbage because none of it is happy memories. None of it. All of it just reminds me of what could have been. So he says, I was just going through your profile pictures. And I respond in kind. Like, he was going through and giving likes, and I remember I was getting notifications that he was doing that. So I responded in kind by going through his pictures. And I should have been honest in saying that I thought that was a little much. But I did the same thing. I said, I know this is an old picture, but something about your stance and expression, you look hot. And then I sent him the Facebook picture. That is on me. That is what I said. I remember what he looked like in the photograph. And I know for sure that I did not find him attractive. I was trying to find the most, the picture that I was the least turned off by. It was far away. He was standing outside of a house. I think it was when he lived in Atlanta. And he was just wearing a white t-shirt and shorts. And, yeah, as I said, his stance and expression. I didn't say, yeah, I love the shape of your face. I love your eyes. I love your body. Because I didn't. So he sent me one of the pictures from my Facebook profile pictures, and he says, I find this super hot. And I said, oh, stop. You'll have to tell me more about your experience living in Atlanta. He says, no, I want to tell you how hot you are. And I said, ha ha ha, and then sent a kissing face emoji with the heart coming out of it. He said, I like how you're staring into the camera like, come get me. He said, damn, I'm so thin, lol. In reply to that picture I sent him, he said, I have a better body now. He said, yeah, you look more muscular in the video you sent me of you playing guitar. He said, nice observation. Then he sent more pictures of himself, including a shirtless selfie of, himself in the mirror at his apartment. I said, making those gains. I didn't say, wow, I'm so attracted to your body. Wow, I think you're hot. And I remember how I felt then looking at the pictures, and I'm looking at the pictures now, and I know how I feel. I know that I was dishonest in saying anything flattering about his body. And then when I saw more of it, when we had the cyber sex call, I was not anticipating that he would have a deformed penis. And I never said that to him. Never in any of the messages did I say, hey, you have a condition. Like, you should see a doctor and ask about this because that's not normal. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So I sent pictures, hashtag gym selfie. Here's my hashtag gym selfie. I sent it at 10:39 p.m. These were photos from 2018 when I lived with Zell in Victoria. When he used to be my gym buddy. He would go to the gym with me. When he was supporting me. When he was trying to help me become a stronger person. And I sent those pictures from 2018. So he did tell me about his experience in Atlanta. He said, the first 6 months was pretty bad as I literally knew no one. I stayed alone and contemplated going back to India after I repaid my college loan as I just didn't feel happy about my life and was pretty low. But then by luck I found a roommate in the same apartment and through him got introduced to a bunch of friends and we all had a wonderful time those 2 years and did a whole bunch of things together. Then slowly people started moving west and I decided to prepare for interviews as well, and after a long interview year I finally landed here. Smiley face. You know, I said something positive back. I said, wow, that's a pretty big chunk of your life, because it was 4 years of his life. And I said, that's good. Your time in Atlanta turned around. I can imagine the internal struggles you had being alone in a new place. And I did sympathize, because I had been an expat myself. I had lived in China. You know, I had lived in Taiwan. I had been to different countries around the world. I know what it's like to be a foreigner. But I actually cared about the politics of Taiwan. I actually cared about the politics of China. I studied the Chinese language. You know, I understand he already knew English, having grown up in India. But the fact that all of his friends were Indian, they were all people from India, I don't have respect for that. When people go to another country, like if I had gone to Taiwan and only made friends with white people, and not even tried to communicate with Chinese people, with Taiwanese people, I just think less of people for not even trying. And I didn't make friends. You know, I am not saying that I had great friends. When I lived in China, I knew Zell's coworkers, you know, and I knew the students that I worked with. But yeah, I can criticize myself. I didn't find his story about living in Atlanta particularly interesting. It's just like, oh, okay, well, I was genuinely wondering what it would be like to live in Atlanta because, you know, I've never lived in the South. I wonder what his experiences might have been. But really, this is somebody who had lived in the United States for 7 years at this point, and his friends were Indian. His friends were people from India. The only kind of interaction that he had with Americans was through his job, you know, his coworkers, or through Tinder. White women that he'd met on Tinder. I think this is somebody who had very little experience actually being friends with an American person. Trying to get to... And I was an extraordinary American person because I lived in different countries, and I am not saying that I am a special person by default. I am saying for this particular person, I am much friendlier to a foreigner than the average American. You know, because I know what it's like to live in a foreign country. And I was kind. You know, I knew what it would have meant to me if, when I was in China, I had really had a lot of Chinese friends. I knew what it would have meant to me living in Taiwan if I would have been able to have Taiwanese friends. And Zell and I were constantly struggling with that. Like, we wanted to get to know vegans in Taiwan. We wanted to get to know people in China as well. Vegans in China. And it's just impossible. I know Abishek was not vegan, but he was vegetarian. And I thought we could connect in this way. I thought we had something in common this way. So yeah, he wrote to me April 7th, 2020, 11:21 p.m. I think we should exchange numbers, Melissa, with a smiley face. We already were connected on Facebook. Why do you want my number? I didn't reply to that. He says, guess you've slept. Was lovely talking to you again today. See you tomorrow. Good night. I reply later, yes, I'm getting ready to sleep now. I enjoyed getting to know you a little better too. Thanks for taking the time to get to know me. Good night, Abby. I'm saying now what I really felt then. Morning cutie pie, he wrote to me at 7 a.m. the next morning. 7:01 a.m., April 8th, 2020. And then he sent a picture of his face with him, sideways in bed with his face on the pillow. He said, getting out of bed is a challenge nowadays. Like I was already his girlfriend. Like, what gives you the temerity to send that to somebody that, like, you're not? It's just... And I reply at 9:48 a.m. Morning, are you working from home? I said, cool, don't let me disturb your workday. He said, you're a welcome disturbance. He said, have a wonderful day. I said, you too. And he kept messaging me throughout the day, showing me images of his coworkers who are of Indian ancestry. So he was in the United States so that he could earn money working as a computer programmer for Amazon. He was not interested in American politics. He was not interested in American history. He didn't care about American history the way that I did. In the year prior to this, I had done reading on slavery in America. I had done reading on First Nations in the United States, on Native Americans. That was what I was interested in. I wanted to know more about American history myself. Having grown up as an American, I was somebody who was critical of American history. He was not even critical of Indian history. He talked about a podcast that he had started. I started this weekly study group where a few of us gather to read an article on India/Hindu philosophy/Indian culture and discuss it. My eventual goal is to convert it into a podcast so that a lot of people in my generation can get an understanding of India from a civilizational perspective, which I feel many are lacking. And I said I'd definitely be interested in that podcast. And I did listen to that podcast eventually. It wasn't right away, because he wasn't uploading it as a podcast. He was just recording it on his phone. And I listened to it with Zell, and neither of us found it worthwhile to listen to. It was very hard to listen to. It was not educational for me. And it just showed that this is a Hindu nationalist. This is just somebody who is a religious fanatic who thinks that India is the greatest place in the world, is not critical of India. I am a nihilist. I am critical of all world history. It's not because I'm American that I, by default, think America is great. It would be the same thing if I had grown up in Europe. I wouldn't think, if I'd grown up in Germany to think, yeah, German history is great. No, there's a lot of horrible history from all over the world. And, when I did actually listen to it, with Zell in the room, I knew that it was terrible. This is later on. April 26, 2020. Yeah, so, alright. This was after the cybersex event on April 20th, when I was trying to just get him to be my friend. I said, would you talk with me and my boyfriend together so that he could meet you? I don't trust myself to speak to you alone. He sent a crying, sad face. I said, I think it would be cool. I want to listen to your podcast with him, and then we could all talk together. He said, sure. I said, he always has something interesting to say. He probably has some input for your podcast. I probably could, but it wouldn't mean as much coming from me. I don't really have the experience to offer suggestions. I said, also, I don't have the economic or historical background. He said, no, I didn't want to talk to you about my podcast specifically, but in general. But yeah, we can talk together sometime, not a problem. So yeah, I had already, to this point, talked about things that were of interest to me. And he is specifically telling me here, I don't want to talk to you about my podcast. He's really telling me he doesn't want to talk to me about anything regarding history, politics, language learning. He just wants to talk about what he ate for lunch, and he wants to treat me like his whore by having this cyber sex relationship. And why do you think that is? Because he doesn't want me to judge me. He doesn't want me to judge him. He says, I've never listened to my podcast before, but I listened to the giant one to see how it sounded before sending it to you, and I am cringing at the number of, yeah, I'm using. It's also the first time we decided we won't go in turns to talk, and instead we can interject whenever we want, so it sounds like I'm cutting people off. I'll send it to you, but don't judge me or the podcast by it. I can also send you others I recorded if you're interested in any of the topics. I said, it's cool, you gotta start somewhere. I'll keep that in mind when I listen. You haven't been publishing them for an audience, right? I said, when I was first appearing in videos, I cringed watching myself and hearing myself. So I was trying to connect with him in this way. Still. It was 1 a.m. It was 1:09 a.m. and I said, I'd better sign off for the night. This is April 26th, 1:09 a.m. He says, no, talk some more. 1:19 a.m. Do you want to play a game of Ludo before going to sleep? And I said, how do I play? He said, you've to download this app called Ludo King. I said, is it a mobile game? He wanted to play Ludo with me, and this went until 1:52 a.m. I said, nope, I gotta hit the hay, even though he was asking to play another game. He texted me the next morning. You know, I just wish I would have been honest with him. Just see how stupid I was going through this, and how weak. You know? I just see things from Zell's perspective, somebody who had put so much time, so much effort, and so much care into his relationship with me. It must have been horrible looking at these messages and just seeing how little value I put into my relationship with Zell, because I was willing to sacrifice everything just to have these stupid messages with this guy until 2 a.m. when Zell is asleep. There are some messages where I say, my boyfriend is asleep. That's May 2nd, 2020. I could go up to the second floor courtyard area, but it's raining. Because he asked for a video call on May 2nd. So I'm messaging him when my boyfriend is asleep. Without his knowledge. Without Zell's knowledge. I'm having these messages behind his back. And he thinks I'm actually doing the things I need to do to be a better person. He thinks that I'm reading books. He thinks that I'm studying Chinese. He thinks that all the effort that he put into the relationship over the past 3 years is not going to waste. He thinks that I'm going to get better. But really, this relationship with Abishek made everything worse. You know, all the progress that I made up to that point just dropped off and went in the garbage after I started talking with Abishek. He brought out the worst in me. The selfishness, the vanity, the stupidity. He emphasized that. He reinforced that. The cruelty, the malice that I was expressing toward my boyfriend, toward Zell, it got worse and worse because I was not showing my dedication to my relationship with Zell. I stopped the level of commitment that I had to Zell at that stage. Went out the window because of this relationship with Abishek. And it led to 4 years of so many terrible incidents because I was lying and losing my mind, knowing that I had lied, knowing that I had destroyed everything, but was hiding it, pretending things were normal when they weren't. I just degraded. It just got worse and worse and declined. Zell was making me a better person. And then this online affair with Abishek made me a worse person. Forever.